In this video, I'm going to read you a story called The Angel Israfel. It's a story that takes you to the world of academia, the world of an English department. Although the English professors are not behaving in a way that you might expect them to, they're a little bit rowdy, a little bit disreputable. Who would have thought? Anyway, just to explain the title, The Angel Israfel is a poem by Edgar Allan Poe. And my main character thinks it's shocking that people don't know it. Why don't they know The Angel Israfel? One of the things that's happened over time, and I think it always happens, is our shared body of reference shifts. There might have been a time when, if you were an educated person, everybody knew the Iliad and the Odyssey. Perhaps in Greek. Perhaps there was a time when everybody knew the angel Israfel. I'm not sure what our frame of reference is now. Iron Man. Anyway, thank you for being here. Enjoy. It was a football Saturday, a home game, and the crowd noise reached them through the open windows. The stadium was less than a mile away, and everything carried. Sometimes the sound was a muttering disappointment, signaling a drive that fell short. Anger and jeering meant a blown call. The home team hadn't scored yet, no frenzy or whooping or horns blaring. The announcer's amplified voice stood out, a separate and incomprehensible buzz. It rose with excitement, then leveled out at the incomplete passes and interceptions. It was the first game of the season. The fans on both sides were hopeful. People dressed in their school's colors and decorated their cars with flags and banners. They sang the school songs and cheered the school cheers. They urged their teams to stomp, beat, tackle, kill the other guys. The windows by the bed were open. The air was warm and honey-scented, the last of summer rather than the beginning of fall. The woman had complained it would be too hot. She wanted the air conditioning on, but the man said no. It would be fine, and there had been some arguing back and forth. Now the bed sheets were damp and their skins smacked together in a comical, distracting way. She'd told him so, God damn it. But now it was too late. This way? Yes. Tell me when. Not yet. Ah, Jesus. Oh, Jesus. It's 4th and inches. Go for it. Would you shut up? He did shut up then. She convulsed and groaned and shuddered, and once she had come back to herself and her breathing leveled out, she opened her eyes and fixed him with a look. Don't say it. Touchdown! Oh, God damn you, Ditman. He grinned, pleased with himself. What are you going to do about it, huh? Lie back and I'll show you. He lay back. The crowd noise from the stadium cheered him along. Later, Ditman went downstairs while the woman was in the shower. He got a beer from the refrigerator and stood with the door open, letting the chill and hum and kindly light bless him. He was old now. Talk about a losing game. But right this minute he felt pretty good. When she came downstairs, dressed and ready to leave, she said, "You could at least put some drawers on." "This is cooler." He took another beer from the refrigerator shelf and offered it to her, but she shook her head. Then he tried to embrace her, but she sidestepped it. "No, it's too weird hugging a naked man when I have clothes on. It's like you're an escaped lunatic. I thought you'd be checking up on the game." "It's not going well. It's too quiet." And here this was supposed to be their turnaround year. "Football's boring," she pronounced, hunting around for her keys, shoes, purse. She always made a show out of being ready to flounce out the door, but she always lingered. This whole thing was weird, so much stupid noise, it's distracting. It's like doing it in the stadium in front of all those people. No, that is not a turn-on. Game days are great. You can do whatever you want. Everybody's occupied. You can drive around town robbing banks. You can come here. I can't keep doing this, Ditman. People are going to catch on to us. You can say you came over to watch the game. Are you listening to me? There could be some consequences here. And in 100 years, will anyone care? You've stopped taking things seriously, she accused him. I don't mean me, or I don't mean just me. What's going on? Nothing. I'm living in the moment. I'd like you to wear a football helmet next time. A football helmet and nothing else. Fine, be an old fool then. She dodged him again. No, I have to go. You should water your lawn. The grass is dying. It's only going dormant. Dying, seriously. It's my lawn. I'll kill it if I want to. You could put in some landscaping. What do you call it? Xerox. Low water. Stuff that grows without a lot of water. Not my style. Oh, I see. Dead is your style. Dormant. Why are you so cussed difficult? Why does everything have to end up in an argument? I prefer to think of it as being battle-ready. Keeps me sharp. Ditman turned his head, listening. From the stadium, a roar, the happy, scattered noise of cheering. See, he said, the team came through. I'm leaving, she said, and this time she did head to the door. Ditman reached out and swatted her ass, which he meant as a gesture of affection. See you next time, he said. She turned to glare at him. Then she slipped into the garage and shut the door behind her with a sound just short of a slam. He heard in quick succession the garage door rolling up, the car's engine starting, the car easing out into the driveway, then picking up speed as it headed off down the street. The garage door came down. She had her own remote opener. The doors shutting had the sound of finality. Steel on concrete. Curtain. Exeunt omnes. He was never sure with her that there was going to be a next time. He liked thinking about all the other people who had secrets. Everyone who had phone contacts listed as plumbing supply or dry cleaners, which served instead as portals to the erotic. Everyone who had a forbidden life on the internet or who came up with ingenious reasons for why they could not be reached during business hours. Everyone who took off their clothes in rooms they had never imagined themselves visiting. Ditman fetched a second beer from the refrigerator and drank to their health. Happiness, too, even if they weren't exactly happy, more like a kind of exalted misery. On Monday at school, people talked about the game. It had been another disappointment, a hard-earned lead that fell apart in the fourth quarter. Ditman said they didn't have their head in it, and I think they overprepared. It backfired on them. Susie, the youngest of the department secretaries, said, Hi, Professor Ditman. So, did you go to the game? He disliked it when people began their sentences with so, but just look at her. Oh, Susie, you turned me woozy. Let's make love in a jacuzzi. You are the cupcake in an oatmeal diet, the honeysuckle in an alfalfa field. No, but I kept track of it. So I thought you'd have really great season tickets, because you're such an important person on campus. She grinned. She was delighted with her irreverent teasing. More like notorious. Ditman nodded. He was ready for his close-up. What time is the committee supposed to meet with the dean? Susie consulted her computer screen. All business now. 10 o'clock. Then, a little shyly, I bet it's going to go just fine. That's nice to hear. Words of encouragement as he was tied to a stake and firewood was heaped at his feet. I was just making a joke, right? I didn't mean... She was concerned. It was adorable. He wanted to hook his fingers in the V neckline of her blouse, spider-walk his hand to her tight and visible nipples. He was such a horny toad lately. What was that about? Not his pills. They weren't that kind of pills. I know. Well, office hours. She shaped her glossy lips into a smile and gave him a look that was moist with pity. That irritated him. He didn't want anyone to feel sorry for him. He didn't want to be the kind of old man who made people feel better about their own obtuse lives. His office was a cubbyhole on the third floor down a side corridor. It was difficult to find, and he liked that about it. The ceiling sloped, the one window was small and looked out into cement. There was a claustrophobic quality to the place that Ditman used to good advantage when dealing with students and others that he did not wish to engage with. Unwelcome visitors could be made to feel especially unwelcome when seated in a chair that did not actually force them to hold their necks at an angle, but which made them do so anyway. Not that he was expecting anyone today. They were having a colleague teach his classes for the present. He unpacked his briefcase and set his desktop and piles of paper in order. He didn't intend on doing any real work, but he wanted to be able to give the impression of working in case anyone intruded on him, which happened soon enough. "How's it going, Ditman?" He looked up, giving a good imitation of reluctantly broken concentration. "Baby cakes." "That's Professor Baby Cakes to you." She held her pose in the open doorway, one hand resting on the doorframe, the other on her outthrust hip. "Penny for your thoughts." "Just wondering if you're aiming for a kittenish look or a vixenish look." "Ha," she said, but she changed her stance so that she was planted squarely with her arms folded in front of her. "Well, you're definitely not being standoffish." "You wish." "Want to pick up where we left off?" "You forget I'm married." "Sometimes you forget, too." She made a certain kind of disdainful face. He'd seen that same expression over the years, even as the face itself had aged like an apple drying. Their history together was so long, so tangled and contrary. Ditman had trouble remembering exactly what had happened in the separate chapters. When she was married for the first time and she'd claimed he'd practically stalked her, "Oh, yes, you did. No, that was later." He had only written a poem for her. Since when was a poem stalking? Yet she was the one who got drunk at the party and chased him around the roof. "Oh, really? That party was in December. Nobody would have been up on the roof," says you. Well, anyway, they were lovers that it all blew up in their faces. Then they'd started up again and quit again, but when? And whose idea and whose fault and who cared? It was all in the past. That kind of roarty tale you warmed yourself with later in life. They were older now. They were supposed to know better. But here she was, draping herself all over his doorframe. He began to have some stirrings of hope, some of them. She said, "In fact, I only came to wish you good luck with the committee and the dean and all." "Thank you. I feel so much better." "They won't try to fire you. That's too complicated with tenure. They'll offer you a deal, a retirement package. A cup of hemlock, an asp to the bosom, a dagger I can impale myself on. Oh, stop the dramatics. It'll be cookies and punch in the faculty lounge." "A nice hemlock punch." "I bet they'll let you keep your office in the library, and the pensions aren't bad." "Are you familiar with the Hemlock Society? Terrific people. You know what their term is for medically assisted suicide?" "Self-deliverance. That is so elegant." "Are you listening to me? Are you all right? You're being maudlin, Ditman. Since when were you maudlin?" She pinched her eyebrows together, scowling at him. "I mistrust your rhetoric these days. Your post and riposte. Frankly, your humor has begun to stoop. Oh, stop the mugging around. See? That's exactly what I mean. You used to think I was funny. You used to be funny. Now you're, I don't know what, like one of those insult comics. Hostile. You say hostile like it's a bad thing." The phone on Ditman's desk rang. "Don't answer it," she told him. Ditman answered, "Pizza King, is this for here or delivery?" A small silence. "Professor Ditman, this is Dean Hackett's secretary. The dean was hoping you'd be able to come meet briefly with her in the grievance committee." "Right this minute?" "If at all convenient." Even though he was expecting something of the sort, Ditman felt his heart knock against his ribs and an unpleasant sensation in his skull, as if a balloon was inflating within it. "Sure," he said, post haste. He hung up. "What did I tell you?" the woman said. "Call back. Tell them you forgot you had an appointment." He shook his head. He was having trouble getting air into his lungs, words into his mouth. A ribbon of cold moved slowly through his blood, congealing it, the trigger for one of his spells. Oh, hell and death, not now. Don't go in there without a lawyer. No lawyers. It's age discrimination. Can you look really old? Show me your old face. The woman hadn't moved, but he had the impression of hovering and fluttering. He said, I'm going to close my eyes and count to 3. When he opened his eyes, she was gone. He was not supposed to take too many of his pills. They gave everything a shiny edge and made him feel as if he was speaking in cartoon bubbles that hovered just above his head. But he had to get through this meeting without collapsing into outright decrepitude. It was preferable that they think he was crazy. They already thought so anyway. He took the pill bottle from his jacket pocket, shook 2 of them into his hand, and swallowed them with a mouthful from the hall water fountain. By the time he left the building, you could feel the 2 forces battling it out within him, bone-deep distress and the chemical counterattack. He sat down on a stone bench to let it play out. Either the pills would win or else he'd just keep sitting there. Eventually someone might notice the bird's nest in his hair, the ivy growing up around his ankles. She was right. His humor had curdled. His riposte was toast. To distract himself, he looked out over the grassy lawn of the quad. The grass was short and frizzled from the dry end of the long summer. Dormant. The campus buildings bordering it were huge structures of red brick and limestone. The architecture ran to columns and pediments and noble facades ornamented by fuddy-duddy carvings and statuary in the classic Greek tradition. The sun was out and the sidewalks were dappled with leaf shade from the tall honey locust trees. The honey locusts had been planted to replace all the elms that had died from Dutch elm disease. Now the honey locusts were dying off, too. They were supposed to have lasted longer. Students walked across the lawn, hither and yon, on the many intersecting cement pathways. The students didn't last long either. They arrived, matriculated, graduated, returned as jolly alums for football games and reunions. Where we walked to school each day, Indian children used to play. What? The pills liked to scamper through his brain, kicking at debris, lighting up random synapses like an old-fashioned pinball machine. Indian children used to... He couldn't remember the rest. There was something about wigwams, too, and bears. The absence of wigwams and bears. A kid's poem, the kind that got smacked down these days because of its celebration of white triumphalism and genocide. Except it wasn't really about that, or at least that wasn't the brain cell that lit up in him. More like a wistfulness for what had gone before. Pause and reflect on the dying trees, the resurgent grass, the students hurtling towards their anxious futures. The glory that was Greece, the grandeur that was Rome, living on in pseudo-archaic versions of themselves on a Midwestern college campus. But in 1,000 years, would anyone care? Oh, boy, he was stoned. He stood up. It was time to go meet with the dean. The administrative offices were housed in a modern building, as if the stern practicalities of governance did not allow for architectural frippery. The fluorescent lights were like something you'd expect on a space station. Ditman took the elevator up. Whoosh! I'm expected, he told the receptionist. Knock, knock, he said, pushing at the door to the inner office. Who's there? Theodore. Theodore who? Theodore wasn't open, so I knocked. One look at the group waiting for him sobered him somewhat. The 6 members of the department's grievance committee, his colleagues, were seated along 2 sides of the conference table. None of the chicken shits met his eye, as if he couldn't tell his share of tales on them. Lou Petrilli liked to stand at the bottom of the stairwell and look up women's skirts. Janice Johnston stole other people's lunches from the refrigerator in the faculty lounge. George Wu crammed tinfoil into the coin slots of campus parking meters so he could avoid paying. They were too craven and furtive to have any interesting vices. And these lesser lights were meant to sit in judgment of him, talk about grievance. Good morning, he said cheerily. They muttered in return. Come on, you sad sacks, let's put a little energy into it. Zippity-doo-dah. Good morning, Professor Ditman, Dean Hackett said. She was having none of his foolishness. He represented one more unpleasant task in a career made up of performing unpleasant tasks. Dean Hackett's office sent out reminders of deadlines and requirements, policies, cautions, clarifications, penalties. Somebody had to do it. She lived with one of the other lady administrators, the sturdy and golf-loving Dean Jean. The usual assumptions were made. Dean Hackett took her leadership obligation seriously. She favored striped Oxford button-downs and corduroy. Today she was wearing a fabric corsage pinned to the bosom of her jacket, a kind of floppy cloth rose made in the unfortunate school colors. Professor? She was staring up at him, astounded. Ditman realized he was bending over her, nuzzling at her collar. Sorry, Ditman said, attempting to straighten himself and remove his face from the neighborhood of her neck. I just wanted to see if your flowers smelled. If you'd like to take a seat? She pointed to the chair at the far end of the table. The hot seat, Ditman wanted to say, but jokes weren't getting him anywhere, and something spiked or flared in him, like a muscle twitching, but painful, and he'd best get his butt in that chair. At the same time, the pills were keeping his brain flopping around like a frog. He sat, told himself to speak only when spoken to. I assume you know why we're here, Professor. One of your students has submitted a formal grievance to the committee protesting. Here the dean picked up a paper and pretended to refresh her memory. Personal bias, capricious grading, and grossly unprofessional conduct. Oh, dearie me. You know the student in question, Joshua Voorhees? Josh, by gosh, Josh the Frosh, Josh from Oshkosh, Posh Slosh, Kabosh. Professor? Oh, yes, Mr. Voorhees. Very motivated. Sorry, little grade grubber. Kind of kid who tells you on the first day he needs an A so he can get into law school. Had Voorhees actually said that? Or was it someone else from years past? Huh. Ha. They were waiting for him to deny it and put up a defense of some sort, and when he didn't speak, the dean said, Perhaps you'd like me to read the formal complaint aloud. Ditman nodded again, raised a careless hand, and let it fall. Whatever. He was distracted by a thin, silvery space on either side of the part in the dean's dark hair. Did this mean she dyed it? That encouraged him, a hopeful sign of vanity. Very well. I enrolled in Professor Ditman's introductory class this fall. It has not lived up to my expectations, either of college or of my own performance. We have turned in 4 assignments, and on every one of them, Professor Ditman has given me a grade of D. I should mention that in high school, my grades for written work of this sort were seldom below a B+. The dean paused. Do you dispute any of this? What high school was that, does he say? This has been very frustrating for me. When I asked Professor Ditman in class what we could do to improve our grades, specifically what I could do to improve my grade, he said that I should not be so puerile. I asked him what he meant by puerile. He put his fingers in his ears and wagged them, crossed his eyes, and stuck out his tongue. I believe there was more to it than that. Indeed, the dean scanned the paper before her. You also made animal noises. Only one animal. It was most likely a donkey. It was a hee-haw noise. There was a movement, a mutter in the room. Were they laughing? Were they shocked? Ditman couldn't tell. He had the sensation of watching everything through glass, a thick, distorting layer. Funny things were happening to the air. He raised his voice to try to make himself understood. There was a whole discussion before that, a pedagogical a process. Yes, Dean Hackett said, though it did not sound like a yes, it sounded more like, watch it, buddy. Now the committee has some questions for you. One of them, Jack Murray, spoke up. Smiling Jack, he giggled when people got hurt. A discussion of what? Farm animals? No. Ditman refused to be amused, to be sidetracked. It infuriated him that they weren't even trying to understand. I was using a poem as a text, an example. Therefore thou art not wrong, Israfel, who despisest an unimpassioned song. On the other side of the glass, the faces wavered, uncomprehending. In heaven a spirit doth dwell whose heartstrings are a lute, he prompted them. Nothing. Sometimes the whole world was like a class of bad students. It's Edgar Allan Poe. Surely they had heard of Poe. Sometimes Ditman imagined himself as the only survivor of his civilization, attempting to recreate its culture for space aliens. George Wu cleared his throat. I'm not seeing the connection here. Wu had a pack of gum in his shirt pocket, so that was where he got the tinfoil to plug the meters. More muttering, which seemed to be agreement. They were not on his side. They were not on anyone's side. They were only against the aggrieved committee. And here he was, left to face them on his own, with a head full of rubbishy old poems and powerful pharmaceuticals, attempting to convince them he was not a dotty old man, or rather, that he was a dotty old man with some juice still left in him, and that even in his ruination he could teach them a thing or two or three. Once more into the breach, he plunged in. The entirety of Mr. Voorhees's written classwork was an unimpassioned song. Another deep breath. His teeth played a merry tune, gnashing and crashing against each other. With an effort, he held them still. I've come to believe that the mortal sin of composition is not defective grammar, not weak topic sentences or illogic or unsupported conclusions. It's bad faith, not meaning what you say, not caring what you mean, what you say, or whether anyone else is moved one way or the other by it. The face of Josh Voorhees arose unbidden in his mind's eye, or rather on the giant screen of a drive-in movie that was standing in for his mind's eye today. Voorhees had an annoying haircut and a wise guy smirk. He wore T-shirts with lewd mottos printed on them. Begone, Voorhees. You shouldn't let your distaste for an individual affect the purity and logic of an argument. You really had to guard against that. But weren't there any sexually transmitted diseases that were especially disfiguring? Things Voorhees might catch? Mr. Voorhees' complaint to you is the best writing he's done so far. That's because he cares about his grade, as he does not care about the First Amendment or the pros and cons of the Electoral College or any other semi-plagiarized pap that he turned into me. It's striking, really, how much better his expression is here. If he can keep it up, I'm sure he's going to be a lot happier with his grade. Not happy necessarily, Ditman qualified. I'm not sure that Mr. Voorhees has a happy life ahead of him, but that's not my doing. There was a silence. George Wu spoke up. You deliberately chose to aggravate and humiliate him as a teaching tool? Oh, well, humiliate? Ditman shrugged. If only the kid was susceptible to humiliation. How had he grown such a hard protective shell, a carapace of arrogance and entitlement? One morning, Gregor Samsa awoke to find he had been turned into a college freshman. Speak up, Professor Ditman. You were mumbling. I wasn't really trying to... What you said. I was attempting to engage him, challenge him. Learning could be a kind of contest, a battle of ideas, or perhaps an effort to make the student understand what ideas are. They want to rely on their good old lazy reflexive habits where emotions and prejudices stand in for thought. Of course they resist. You push, they push back. Sometimes you move the ball a little way down the field. Sometimes you get tackled for a loss. He had begun well enough, but now he saw that they were once more confused and skeptical. No points on the board, he said. It was one of those 10-ton jokes you chained yourself to by mistake. The silence this time had a measuring quality. They were sizing him up, readying the kill shot. Do him in and leave his bones to bleach out. Where we walked to school each day, Professor Ditman used to play. And why the stunt with the donkey noises? George Wu continued. I can't recollect another committee meeting where we talked about donkey noises. Ditman retreated to protective mumbling. It had to do with puerile. He couldn't remember why he had behaved as he did, except he was exasperated and wanted to stick out his tongue. Making a point about puerile, Dean Hackett spoke up. I expect it was from Animal Farm. Benjamin, the wise donkey. Do I have that right? Ditman peered down the length of the table at her, but the dean's expression was, as always, severe and unreadable. Why was she throwing him a lifeline? Yes, Animal Farm, Ditman echoed. How so? The donkey is one of the only animals who knows how to read really well. It gives him greater insight. I was suggesting that Mr. Voorhees broaden his readings in literature as a way to improve his composition skills. They weren't really buying it, but at least he'd escaped total mortification, and now his pills were wearing off, and he experienced the unpleasant sensation of having swallowed a large, cold stone. Of course, in Animal Farm, it's the pigs who are really in charge. He was studying his own folded and disturbingly ancient hands, the hands of an exhumed and unwrapped mummy. He had an impression of looks being exchanged among them. Who wants to take this? It was Janice Johnston who administered the coup de grace. Furtive, thieving Janice. Someone should take her to lunch now and again so she didn't feed her loneliness with other people's sandwiches. Janice's tone was flute-like and regretful, a good impersonation of sincerity. Professor Ditman, you've had such a distinguished career. Rubbish. That meant has been. They'd made him teach the wretched composition course as a hint. Get you gone. Wouldn't it be best to step away now and have more time to pursue your own interests? Ditman stopped listening. The thing inside him that felt like a stone was, in fact, a stone. This had been explained to him. There were no metaphors. How much of his life had he spent saying that one thing was like another thing? Perhaps he should have been doing something else instead. Ditman looked up. He was expected to say something. He cleared his throat. I believe I would like to stay on just until the end of the football season. The downtown bar where he ended up that night was one he hadn't been to for some time. He remembered it as a pokey sort of place where a solitary drinker could hide out undisturbed. Now it had been renovated and taken over by young people. Ditman sat at the far end of the bar, making his scotch and water last. He wasn't supposed to be drinking, but what was the worst that could happen? He'd seize up, turn blue, and expire face first on the bar. The bartender would think he was just passed out and leave him be until closing time, then discover his error and call the knackers. Easy. Around him, happy groups drank watery cocktails and helped themselves to the free peanuts. Monday night football played on multiple oversized screens. Teams nobody had to get excited about. The players must have felt it also. The two sides lumbered up and down the field, giving every indication of going through the motions. Where was the passion, the will to strive, to prevail? Everything that made the fight worth fighting. Wimps, frauds, overpaid and overpadded babies. Wow, Professor Ditman, what are you doing here? Oh, miracle that was life, abundant and blessed. Hello, Susie. Why, I was waiting for you. She giggled. The inner surface of her lip, where her candy-colored lipstick gave way, had a dark sexual flush. She said, No, really, what are you doing here? Ditman indicated his glass. Can I get one for you? She was old enough to drink, wasn't she? He couldn't really tell age anymore. Everybody looked to be 16. Oh, I don't. She hesitated, looking behind her. I'm here with some friends. Girlfriends or a hairy and predatory male? Just one, to keep me company. He tried not to beg. All right. She sat down and Ditman signaled the bartender. She was reflected in the mirror behind the bar, and in this way he could ogle her freely. She was wearing a bright pink shirt that was made out of some stretchy stuff and clung to the architecture of her chest. She was a shade blonder than she was in the department office. She ordered a strawberry margarita, a pink drink. Thanks, she said, wrapping her small hand around the base of the glass. The glass was sweaty. A delicate sweat shone at her hairline, on her upper lip, and at the pink plunge of her shirt. God help him. So, Susie put her glass down and smiled. She was just being nice. He could have wept. I don't know if I'm supposed to drink with the professors. Well, I won't be one for long, Ditman said, at least not active duty. She stared at him, stricken. You mean a voluntary separation, handshake agreement. Oh, God, I'm so sorry. She swiveled her chair towards him, seemed about to embrace him, but checked herself. That is so unfair. It is what it is. The beast in him was beginning to see certain possibilities in his situation. He shrugged. I've had a good run. I can't believe they, fired you. It's only a little like firing. Still, she shook her head. She had applied some black substance to her fair eyelashes. He wanted to mess it up, turn it into slutty smears, undo and dishevel her head to toe. I mean, I guess you can still do your research, and I bet you have other things, interests, hobbies. Yes, lechery. Water skiing. Really? For a second, she believed it. Then she thumped him playfully between the shoulder blades. Come on, seriously, don't you have things you always wanted to do but were too busy? She was being hopeful and encouraging. She wanted to make everything all right. Ditman considered. I used to write poetry. Her eyes widened. The black lashes quivered, unpleasantly spider-like. Ditman was sorry he'd said anything. Not very good poetry, he qualified. My head was always too full of everybody else's poems. I could never write a poem in 100 years. No, my dear, the poems would be written about you. She looked away and turned her attention to her drink. Offended? Flattered? Had he been too bold, or did she want to hear more? Maybe he should start dropping mysterious hints about his health. Either simulate or actually suffer through another attack. Reluctantly, he'd owned up to having a condition. He hadn't wished to worry people, had kept it bravely under wraps. Now this unfortunate weakness, he apologized. No, he could get home on his own. It wasn't far. Well, if she insisted. He only needed to rest. Yes, much better now that he was lying down. A little brandy might help restore him. He would tell her where to find it. She was so kind. Perhaps she would have a brandy too, just to keep him company. Ditman wondered if she'd been a cheerleader in high school, still capable of limber and acrobatic feats. Everyone's lust was puerile. And quick, write her a poem. Nope. Even in his imaginings, he couldn't make it happen. He would at least save himself from being that kind of fool. Oh, Susie, all my poetry was in my body, and now that is nearly at an end. He let the back of his hand graze her elbow. Another of whatever that is, the strawberry surprise. No, I need to get back to my friends. Thanks, it was nice talking to you, and I'm really sorry. Don't be sorry about a thing for the whole rest of your life. Ditman looked away then. When she kissed him on the cheek, it took him entirely by surprise. By the time he recovered, she was gone, and when he searched the air for her scent, he smelled only hairspray. He stopped going into his office. The phone rang a lot. He unplugged it. Once or twice someone came to the front door and knocked, but after a while they went away. When he ran out of groceries, he made furtive trips to convenience stores. He tried to read, but he knew all the books already, and his own opinions bored him. Mostly he lay in bed in his upstairs room, contemplating the view of his feet. He drank most of a bottle of scotch, but it made him throw up blood, and so he stopped. He felt lousy. The weather took a turn towards fall. It rained, and damp leaves clogged the gutters. Bare ruined choirs where late the sweet birds sang, Ditman announced to nobody. The wind picked up and blew ribbons of bleached cornstalks across the lawns. His grass revived briefly, a sodden olive green. Then the sky cleared. It was big and blue with white clouds scooting along in the cool breeze. Perfect football weather. Ditman opened the window so he could hear the fans passing by on the sidewalk, hauling their lap robes, stadium seats, coolers. They were happy, excited about the coming spectacle. The team had won a game last week and would now try to win two. Car horns honked. He thought he smelled barbecue from some of the tents and awnings set up for tailgates. People went all out, grilling, decorating, serving up various team-themed eats. If he chose to, Ditman supposed he could put on a school sweatshirt, strike up a conversation in his guise of a harmless, well-meaning old man. He would be offered plates of corn on the cob, baked beans, chicken wings. Somebody might have a spare ticket. He could sit in the stadium, roar and groan along with everyone else. One last time be part of the great human herd, swayed by the same tides. But no, that tide had receded without him. Poor Ditman. He was a walrus stranded alone on a smelly beach. When he heard the distant noise of the garage door rolling up, it startled him. It was the last thing he expected or wanted, and unless he was quick enough to get himself downstairs and bolt the door to the garage, there was no avoiding it. "Go away," he called out when he heard her feet on the stairs. "What are you doing in there, lying around feeling sorry for yourself?" "Yes." "Well, snap out of it." "No, I'm good at it." Dean Hackett pushed the bedroom door open. "Knock, knock," she said. She wore a football helmet with the chin strap left dangling. Her only other item of clothing, a pair of white crew socks. She walked to the bed. "Move over." He couldn't speak. He made walrus noises, a kind of underwater barking. Dean Hackett sat down next to him on the mattress, very naked and prim. "What's the matter? I thought you asked for this." I didn't expect. Oh, look, this is embarrassing. I might not be able to." "Come on, Ditman. You aren't dead yet." He started to ask her how she knew, but closed his mouth. She always knew everything. Now she sorted through the litter on his bedside table and picked out a quarter. Heads or tails? She made it sound like an especially filthy proposition. Oh, Lord have mercy. She sent the coin into the air. Ditman watched it climb and spin and tried his damnedest to keep it from coming down.